The Forgotten Minotaur King. Side Story. The Attack on Mindas Castle. Part 2. Artois Valoigne, lieutenant of the Morongo Knights, along with a pair of his closest generals, infantry captain Alicio and grenadier captain Galane, anchored their grappling hooks along the Mindas Castle library's outer walls. Alicio nervously stroked his long dark mustache with his free hand as he waited for visual confirmation from their inside man, the raw-boned scholar Kaisel Bakshi. He had expressed his concerns with the lieutenant that the only thing between their rescue being disrupted by what sounded like an ancient vampire was a single nebbish bookworm. If that ex-Lavrie de Cher hitwoman, Tristafay, hadn't vouched for this so-called scholar to Valoigne, he would have strongly suggested postponing the infiltration another day. As things stood, he, Galane, and Artois hung on the outer wall for what felt like an eternity, until he spotted the kid, along with what looked like an equally underdeveloped dragonid, ducking below to give his co-captain and Valoigne the heads up that their cover had arrived, and giving the handful of rankless soldiers hidden in the brush below the signal to prepare to climb, after all of the higher-ups breached the courtyard. Valoigne then took his chance to call forth the dozen or so skeletal warriors he managed to obtain from the Minotaur mayor's strange dungeon outside of the town. This entire operation felt sketchy, and the overabundance of necromantic elements served only to unnerve Alicio further. Galane began to double-check her and her grenadier troops' equipment. All 5 of them had enough alchemical blasting agents to take down something the size of the very wall they dangled so precariously from at this very moment. Another aspect that put Alicio at unease, but he trusted his co-captain with his life, along with his lieutenant. As they fell one by one into the courtyard, being sure not to lose footing on the freshly upturned dirt mounds, they were warned housed sleeping thralls, which were under the command of this Lord Carnager, who skulked the very library halls directly to their rear. They crept soundlessly, due to only wearing light chain armor, given the stealthy nature of their mission. They entered the linked tower at the opposite end of the library and prepared for the assault. Fugazzi saluted the retreating form of Prince Dinge. The general aura of death that surrounded that brute at all times was occasionally enough to even put him, a trained assassin and wet boy, on the back hoof. He wiped the sweat from his azure, avian-like brow. Feeling the need to regain control of the room, he began to slap a few of the wall-eyed half-orcs he was forced to take charge of, sending 2 out for backup as the prince requested, and having another trade places with the ogre that worked the dungeon's portcullis. The added muscle couldn't hurt. He walked amongst his men, making sure they were all on alert, if he was to entrust them with the safety of this prisoner, at least for the one day this Oxor Chungus fellow had left to live. Feeling things for the most part seemed in order, The confused but seemingly welcome for a change of scenery ogre doorman towered over the now 8 severe-looking half-orcs that bracketed the small mouse-lynx prisoning cell.
Alright, man. Okay. I trust you guys. Got this under control. I don't want to hear about no screw-ups. You got me? Because if I don't like it, I'll kill you, okay? And if I don't, Prince Dinge will do far worse. You got me? Capiche?
He began to retreat toward the exiting portcullis, thinking to himself the prince was simply being paranoid. When he and a few more troops headed down to the university to sweep these Montchen knights up, Dinge and the Regent Mother would feel like they never had anything to worry about in the first place. Might even put in a good word to his boss about what a good job Fugazzi did. Then his thoughts turned to the new girl, Odegra, for some reason. As she swam in his head, he thought about what a great idea it would be to bring her along on this university raid. If she could put her money where her mouth was, she could even meet his boss. Sven would love an ex-Lavrie de Cher's chick, and anyone with the balls to take up the title of a world-famous killer like the old Odegra he knew from way before this rattling girl was born. She must be worth something. Adding a little skip to his step with the thoughts of the coming raid, Fugazzi almost allowed himself to be startled by the arrival of 4 more guardsmen at the dungeon gate.
Sorry, Wet Boy Fugazzi. Lady Odegra told us about an attack. We got here as soon as we could.
Fugazzi stepped back. Odegra said what? Before the new arrivals could muster a simultaneous salute, a shiver ran up the tangerine-colored mane that ran down Fugazzi's back. Whipping his head to the opposite end of the dungeon, he saw what looked like a shining explosive flying through the air and detonating at the center of his oh-so-severe-looking troops. Lord Natanus Carnager glided across the library's floor. The feeling of youthful vigor that only returned to him while in his chamber, or out else in the dead of night, drained from his pate as he made his way to the library exit. Young Chinook stood from his study desk at the re-emerging of his superior.
Count Natanus, I'm ready to begin my study. Bicel will, of course, need a little extra help, but I'm sure I can show him the ropes.
Smiling at Chinook's overly confident and ambitious display, Carnager continued towards the doorway.
I'm off to investigate this friend of Mr. Coxey's. If she's as handy with the quill as he says, perhaps she could give you a lesson.
The jibe may have been unnecessarily cruel, as the shattering of Chinook's ego was plain across his drooping, dragon-like face. But Carnager was always direct with his intentions, and the boy would understand. Leaving the library, something was automatically amiss. The scent of ancient necromantic energy was in the air. It felt, in Lord Carnager's nostrils, slightly moderate, something akin to uncontrolled ghouls or controlled skeletons. This, along with the thrall tomb closest to the courtyard walls, seeming to have been recently ruffled. Carnager contemplated potential scenarios as he wreathed himself in shadow, a vainglorious effort to dull the sun's painful effects on his vampiric visage, hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. He managed to turn to the library doors and seal them with a passable incantation. Following that, as he approached the dungeon and foundry tower, he struck around 6 thralls from the ground, wreathing them in shadow as well, so that the undead men and women wouldn't immediately burst into flames, just merely sizzle like cooked meat beneath a blazing sun. He entered the tower doorway to the song of explosions erupting in the dungeon.
Oh, it's always the worst scenario. I'll resolve that once I'm done evaluating this Norge girl.
Grenadier Captain Galane lobbed her glass grenade into the center of the stalwart orcs, aiming for the dungeon door at the center of their detachment. The explosion knocked the pair of guards closest to the center into the cells on the opposite side of the chamber. As the remaining half-dozen half-orcs, Galane thought to herself, there must be a sad or else disturbing story behind this homogeneous group, grabbed their weapons and headed toward the Morongo Knights. Valoigne ordered the charge as his bizarre skeletal legion stormed the orcs and even managed to hold them back with only makeshift clubs and bare bony hands alone. The deadlock gave the rank-and-file knights the perfect opportunity to act as a second wave, slashing and hacking at the orc kin. Things seemed to be going their way. She turned to Alicio in an attempt to coordinate the acquisition of the prisoner, but she saw he was in battle with the sole towering ogre of the group. The bald, flabby, and monstrous bulk of the creature was giving Alicio more trouble than he could handle. Even when several underling knights broke free from the orcs to aid him, Galane ordered a grenadier close to the tussle to blind the brute with a flash bomb. As the men nodded in agreement and shouted for Alicio and his men to cover their eyes, an azure claw from seemingly nowhere grabbed his wrist. Bending it at an unnatural angle, the new arrival smashed the flash bomb directly into the grenadier's face. Galane was shocked as the scalded knight collapsed to the hooved feet of some sort of bird satyr monster.
Hey, I guess that guy wasn't so bright, huh? Who are these guys, huh? Who are you tough guys, huh? Put down your weapons and surrender, okay? I don't want to have to repeat myself.
Galane unsheathed her rapier, which elated in blazing red swirls of explosive energy. Turning her face from the satyr, she spotted Oxor, who was bracing himself against the cell walls, with a look of both fear and elation tinged across his white-furred face. Lunging for the cell door, which her initial explosive only partially dented, she stabbed the point of her rapier at the center of the bars. The steel rods grew hot and popped apart like splintered tree trunks. With the way clear, Valoigne took the lead, wielding his spear like a dancer, beheading 2 orcs from a new quartet that seemed to arrive with the satyr. Galane got between Valoigne and the blue avian creature himself.
Hey, okay? You really don't want to do this, lady. Trust me, okay?
With a quick feint, Galane closed the distance between herself and the satyr, aiming her lunge at the being's beak. At the very moment she felt contact, she prepared to shield herself from the upcoming explosion, only to see her sword was not only stuck, but wrenched inside the body of the blinded grenadier the satyr had just killed. He somehow managed to riposte her feint faster than she could think. The body began to glow and swell. That was when Galane also clocked the amount of alchemical agents not only the dead grenadier, but she herself were draped in. Leaping into the air and kicking out with both feet, she knocked the grenadier's corpse, along with her famed rapier, Ixia, several feet away from herself and the melee that was still roaring around her. A sudden and swift kick to her back sent her sprawling even further from the explosion that ensued. Valoigne, carrying Oxor's portly frame on his back, knelt down to shade her from the debris that rained down from the now sun-exposed dungeon ceiling.
Galane, are you okay? We need to get out of here. The half-orcs are nearly done, but we've lost just as many men. Kaisel warned us about Fugazzi. I will deal with him.
She nodded, holding her side as she rose and took the squealing and squirming Oxor onto her shoulder. Alicio seemed to still be in a stalemate with the single ogre, but she had a clear path to the tower exit. Valoigne spotted Fugazzi, who was casually pulping the head of another grenadier and curiously inspecting his armor.
Hey, I hope I didn't blow anyone's mind with that last switcheroo. But seriously, folks, put your little sissy spear down, or I'm gonna turn you into a popsicle.
Valoigne hoisted his polearm, fully aware of this assassin's abilities and techniques, having seen them firsthand, and heard of far worse from their kind.
They say there is a failed actor in every spy, and a cowardly warrior in every assassin. Come, beast, let us test our mettle.